Hello, everyone. You listen to another episode of Let's Talk Sports with Tim McKain, and I have the very pleasure of interviewing Marvin Williams Sr. Not only is this man a Navy, he fought in the military for our country. He also is the author of Secondary Break, an NBA Dad Story, and member of the Professional Basketball Fathers and Men's of Professional Basketball. How you doing today, Mr. Williams?
Hey, I'm doing good, Tim. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. So, first things first, what led you to start writing this book? What led you to write this book?
Well, I got to the stage of my life. I'm 56 now, and I started reflecting back on where I came from, all my struggles, and all the negative stuff that I had going on in my life as a child. And then I look back on where I'm at now, financially set. I got a wonderful three kids, one who's a former NBA basketball player. I'm financially set, so I thought I'd give God thanks. And I wrote the book really to hope that I could help young people, if they read it, to be inspired to say, hey, man, this guy, he went through all this and he came through okay, so maybe I can too.
Yes, sir. So who are some of the people that have come to you and they've let you know that this book has inspired them to a new journey in life, a new path in life?
I just had a gentleman named Michael H. Scott, who used to play in the NBA. He had a book. He had read my book, and he had a book that he thought about publishing. And then after reading my book and seeing and interviewing me, and he said, "Okay, well, I'll get my book out." And so he just came out with his book last week on Amazon. I was so proud. I'm so happy. Yeah,
that's amazing. So in the beginning, not only are you an NBA dad, but you also were a baller yourself back in the day. You played against Michael Jordan, the likes of Michael Jordan, growing up in Wilmington. But when did your love for the game of basketball begin?
It started when I was a child in New York. In my book, I talk about how my mom and dad was kind of dysfunctional alcoholics. And so one of my friends said, hey, man, come up to the courts. We was in Brooklyn. He said, come to the courts, man, and I'm going to show you how to play basketball. And then he taught me how to play, showed me the basics of the game, him and one of my other friends named Tony. And I fell in love with it from there because it's a sport that you can play by yourself. You can play with a group or by yourself. And then I just used it over time as a therapy to whenever I have issues, I just get on the court and shoot and think and play, you know?
Yes, sir. So about New York, because there's something about New York, whether it's just something about New York and the fight game and just, when it comes to Black equality, like who are some of the figures that you grew up idolizing and wanted to be like, not only as a basketball player, but also as a civil rights leader?
Well, the biggest one, when I grew up, I didn't know it at the time, but I had neighbors who were Muslims, and they used to take me to the mosque with them. And I used to sit, I remember sitting in a room with a bunch of people and listening to like a jukebox. And at the time, I didn't know it, but it was Malcolm X. It was Malcolm X doing his speech, every Sunday when they did it. So Malcolm X was one of the guys I really looked up to. I love the Black Panthers. I think the Black Panthers has gotten a bad rap over the years. But the Black Panthers, for me personally, have helped us. Like during the summers, when they started the summer school program where you kids be out of school and they don't have no food, you can go on your block. Each block had a place where you can go and get, lunches. And so the Black Panthers started that. The Black Panthers, whenever there was black and white issues with the police, it was always the Black Panther that stepped in for the Black people and fought for them. So Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers, Malcolm X, and Muhammad Ali.
Yes, sir. So growing up in New York, who are the top 5 best players that you've seen come out of New York in your time when you were a kid growing up? Who were some of those great basketball players?
At the time when I was coming up, my favorite was probably Walt Frazier. I fell in love with the Knicks, Walt Frazier, and I remember my school used to take us on field trips. And I remember them taking us to a game, and I didn't know it at the time, and Willis Reed was also on the championship team, as a matter of fact. And Willis Reed, the night we was there, Willis Reed came back. He came running out of the locker room because people didn't had a major injury and people didn't expect him to come back. And he came running out of the locker room during the game. So that was amazing to be there at that time and see all that.
Yes, sir. That was against Wilt Chamberlain, correct?
Yeah,
Arguably the greatest. I consider him the greatest center of all time, but we'll just say for the sake of argument, arguably one of the greatest of all time. Willis Reed, that was probably the greatest basketball comeback, in my opinion, in history.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you.
Yes.
It was funny that we talk about Will Chamberlain because I was watching the game last night with the Warriors with the Warriors and Boston, and they were talking about how Will averaged 50 points a game and 26 rebounds a game in one season. That's unbelievable without the 3-point line.
Crazy.
Ain't that? Yeah. I'm with you. He's probably one of the best centers of all time ever.
Absolutely. So transitioning from New York to North Carolina, what was that experience like? Because I'm be honest with you, I have family members who also, they lived in New York, they grew up in New York, and then they transitioned to North Carolina. They moved to North Carolina. What was that experience like for you?
It was different because it was psychologically different because for one thing, in New York, it's a big melting pot. You got Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, you got everybody, and we friends with everybody during that time. And so when I went back to the South, they was into this integration, segregation stuff, and I, as a young kid, I didn't quite understand it, and I was over time I got bitter about it because you walk in the stores and see white people just staring at you like this, you just feel a hatred.
Yeah.
So I had to adapt to that, and that got real tough. Then my grandma and grandpa they was always on you about behaving and don't embarrass them in front of white people, and so you had the fear of not disappointing them in front of white people and things like that. So it was a big different psychological transition for me.
Wow. So how did you originally adapt to it? Because for me, my father, when he was a young kid, probably about 12 years old, there was just this driver. He saw my father and he spit at him, stopped what he was doing and just spit at him. So did you have any of those experiences in the South like that? And how did you handle it? Did you talk with anyone about it, or how'd you deal with it?
Well, I've had similar experiences where, like I said, we walk into a store and people just stare at you, and then it was like you got to stay away from them, but you just go get your stuff and get out the store. And so you felt that vibe. But then I also, when I grew up, I spent a whole lot of time in tobacco fields, and my parents basically pimped us out to all the farmers. All the farmers were white, and so you get up 5 o'clock in the morning, you work to 6, 7 o'clock at night, nonstop. And then if the owners felt like you worked hard enough, they give you a soda and crackers for lunch. And I did that for many, many years. And so I understood kind of emotionally what slavery was like, but I was free, but I still did the labor of a slave. You know what I mean? You get up every day and you had to listen to the white man. He owned the property, and then you had to do what he asked you to do, or else you didn't get paid or you didn't get fed.
Absolutely. So, transitioning to basketball, what was the play like? Do you remember the play like you playing in New York? What was New York style basketball compared to North Carolina style basketball at the time?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. The New York style was more showboat, finesse, handle the ball, be able to dribble, and they didn't care nothing. We didn't care nothing about being able to shoot, but if we could handle the rock, if you look at all the best point guards that's come out of New York over the years, they're great ball handlers. And that was one of the main things we learned versus like North Carolina is take it to the rack, bang somebody, be aggressive, and be angry. You know what I mean? And so that's how I learned over the years. I learned to play that style. And my college coach told me, he said, "Why you play so angry?" I said, "That's the way I play because coming up New York or North Carolina, you had to play that well. You only get one shot. They'll pick a team with so many players. They pick a team, and if your team loses, you might not get picked up for another 2 hours. You know what I mean? So you had to get with it. Yeah."
That's crazy. That's crazy. So who were some of your favorite matchups growing up, not only as a child, but also in your high school basketball days, whether it be a friend or whether it be a great basketball player that had that same potential as you did? Who were some of those matchups?
Well, when I moved to North Carolina, I was probably about 13. And then I ended up being friends with a gentleman named Kenny Gaddison, who went on and played in the NBA, I think, for about 16 years. Then I think he coached for about 10 years. Kenny was one of my closest friends. And so he was a big matchup playing against him. And then I started being friends with Larry Jordan and Michael Jordan. They would come to the courts because their grandparents lived in my hometown. Mike and them lived in Wilmington and Kenny lived in Wilmington. So which is about a 30-minute drive from my hometown. So they would come up and we would play. And then they would go to church with their grandma. And then after church, we would play ball. So Kenny, Larry, Mike, my cousin in the book, I talk about William Newkirk, probably one of the most talented people I've ever played against. They're the one that really taught me the game.
That's amazing. So you also had a really good basketball career as well in high school. What led you to decide not to go to Division I automatically?
My coach who was Joe Clay Jones, he always insisted on he said, Marv, you got talent to go play at college, but I was always afraid. I think I was more afraid than anything. The background, my mom and them, they weren't very up on, go to college. But my dad was always, when you graduate from high school, you're gonna go to work or do something. So, and my parents never come, all the years I played basketball, they never came to my games, but they read about me and my brother a lot in the newspapers and stuff. But my father wasn't big on sports. He was big on, he had 19 kids. He didn't have time to be worried about.
Hey, I understand that.
Time watching no hour or two watching no basketball game. And so I think more to it, to answer your question, I probably just more afraid and wasn't sure of myself at that time, being 17, if I could do it.
I got you. One of the things that I found interesting was you talked about today's game and like how like if you were in today's era, you would have definitely have just been recruited, one of the top recruits in the nation. You would have been recruited, played basketball professionally. Speak on like how just college basketball programs and even professional teams, they look at players differently from your era, your son's era, and now to the present era.
Today's kids, it frustrates me to watch them because the scouts, whether they be college or pro, they base it on future potential. You know what I mean? Whereas when I was coming up, you had one dude and he had to really be the here and now. It wasn't about him going to the NBA. It was about him, okay, can he play at the college level? Will he do something at the college level? They never looked at you as, and then you didn't have social media. I think for me, if I'd had I definitely would have been in the league if I had social media like these kids got, for sure. So I think the thing is just they look at kids now more potential, but it bothers me because they're not fundamentally sound. You look at college basketball today. They back when I was playing, they average 80 points a game. These kids, some teams barely can average. They barely can shoot, but because they're tall, lanky, and athletic, they're considered a prospect now.
I got you.
Yeah.
So you had your son while you were still in college. When did you know he could play basketball? When did you introduce him to playing basketball?
Well, what happened was after I got through trying out, I stopped trying out. I was trying out for a lot of different teams. I kept getting invited to CBA, which is now the G League. It was the CBA then, Continental Basketball Association. I got invited to a lot of tryouts. John Lucas had the last tryout I went to with John Lucas. He had me come in. You got 80 guys trying to get 3 spots, and so they were cutting. They were cutting every day. So I did that tryout, and I just got frustrated and tired with it. I get close, but not over the hump. You know what I mean? I'll make the all-star team, the best 10 players. Then with John, I was one of the best 3 players. And so when I got cut, I just said I was going to start coaching. I actually went through a period of drinking and frustration and disappointment. And so after that, my girlfriend, she told me, said, hey, man, why don't you start coaching basketball? And I'm like, man, I don't want to coach. And then because to me, your goal was to get to the NBA. So settling for coaching would be like just settling. But I ended up coaching. She taught me into coaching girls. And I ended up coaching and loving girls basketball. And I coached girls basketball, some of the elite players, for about 25 years. And then I started, when Marvin would come to practice with me, I would teach him stuff after practice, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then some of the girls who were really, really good, Sheila Lambert, she was spending a lot of time. She was one of the top girls players in the country. And she went on to play at Baylor and the WNBA. So she started teaching them. And then he asked me to start coaching. And so I said, you sure that's what you want to do? I just want to make sure I wasn't pushing it on him, you know what I mean? Because I did it. And he said that's what he wanted to do. So I started doing individual workouts with him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What led you not to push him? Because some NBA, some basketball dads, especially in our culture, we try to push that. You know what I mean? We want our sons to be great, whether it be athletes or great, whatever. And we like push that onto them. What led you not to push, your dream onto your son? Because I noticed that you didn't do it the same way other fathers have.
Yeah, because I think part of it was seeing how the parents were with the girls. There were so many moms and dads just obsessed with their kid going to college and being a great star, and it bothered me. And so, and then the only thing I knew at that time that I could teach him was basketball. And so I figured, well, at least in high school, he'd get on the team, play and enjoy basketball, and get through high school real easy and keep him out of trouble. That was the real main reason. And then I just I didn't see myself as, my dream was my dream. My dream was over, and I accepted that, and I just moved on. But he wanted to learn, so I just used the resources I had and spent time teaching him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you coached girls basketball for 25 years. What were some of the greatest moments with you coaching girls basketball? And also, why do you believe that women's basketball doesn't get the same respect that it deserves?
My greatest moment was watching Stanford, the lady, young lady, I can't think of her name right now. She's been at Stanford for a long time. She recruited at least 10 of my girls. And I remember watching them girls, how hard they work. And then when we would go on tournaments, we go to Denver, we blow out people, we win championships. We was the program was called Seattle Magic. It was probably one of the elite girls AAU basketball programs in the country. And I saw those girls grow. I saw those girls get scholarships, and that really, really excited me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, actually, when it comes to AAU, I really want to know your perspective on it, because there's the pros and cons to AAU basketball. So, for one, AAU basketball is very positive in the fact that you have the best playing the best. Everybody knows each other. They already know who the best is. But a lot of people also question the AAU because of how many games the kids play and how it could affect, their knees and their health and their body. So, like, what are your thoughts on the AAU when it comes to the positives, the pros and the cons of it?
The pros of it is you'll get more, your kid gets more exposure and they get to travel and go out of place. So because like when I had my AAU program, a lot of those kids were from the country in North Carolina, never been out of their hometown. So the positive for them guys to get out there and experience and see that there's other life out there. So they grew up in your own town, your own city, your own friends. It gave them opportunity to play against, to see what level they were at. Because you might be a big fish in a little pond in your little small town, 1A school, but then you play against some guy. Like a good example, Marvin, when he was 12, and he thought he was really, really good. He was 6'5" at 12, and he was pretty good for 12 years old. He ended up running into LeBron James and playing against LeBron, and he realized at that moment that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So it made him go back and start working a little harder to get to the level where he needed to be at. So that was one of the positives for me. The negative is the AAU has gotten to the point where parents are so obsessed with their kid. Not everybody's not going to be an NBA player.
Yeah.
I never envisioned my kid as being an NBA player. I just wanted to be a basketball player. I wanted to watch him enjoy himself and play, and I sit there and cheer for him. But now you got parents up in the stands cussing out referees, doing all this crazy stuff. It don't make no sense. And not only you embarrassing the kid and you're not teaching them nothing. You teach them how to, if you don't get your way, to act a fool. And so I think now the AAU program has gotten so big, and money's involved as well. You got all these sneaker companies buying the kids and buying the parents, and it's not productive. I don't think it's productive at all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What do you think the black community, what do you think we need to do to push not only our kids, but also our parents into believing, hey, look, sports is not the only avenue to success. Being a doctor, being a lawyer, being a coach, being a reporter, like, what do you think it would take for the community, our community, to push those things out instead of just forcing kids to play in the NBA? Because at the end of the day, there's only 300 jobs,
right,
and some of those aren't available. And we've got probably, if someone were to say how many African Americans want to play professionally, it'd be millions. What do you think we need to do to push the envelope in other directions?
I think it should start with the parents. Like, you want to, the basic foundation, you got to teach your kid that basketball can be a means to an end. Just because you don't make it, don't set your goal on being in the NBA. Use basketball as a way to get in college and get a free education. I tell my kids when I was in my AAU program, basketball, if you love basketball, you don't necessarily have to play. I had to learn that. If you love basketball, there's so many different avenues basketball can take you. But first thing you want to do is get a free education as a black person. Because a lot of parents can't afford to pay for their kids to go to college. So use it as a tool to get your kid to where they want to be, not as a life mission. You know what I mean? Teach them talk to them and educate them. Hey, man, you can still go to school and get you a degree in law. And I think our country, one of the things our black people need to understand too is we need more financial people. If you look at the financial industry, there's white people. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of blacks. There's some there, but there's not a lot. There's doctors. We need doctors, black doctors, lawyers. You know what I mean? Because the laws have always been against us, and we need our own people to fight for us to help change some of those laws that's against us. So I think as a parent, I would instill in my kid that, look, basketball is not going to, if you end up being a pro, cool, but your goal shouldn't be to be a pro. Your goal should be to get a free education.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Okay. So who were um, some of the black people that you introduced to your kids outside of sports? So you say you don't have to necessarily be sports, but who are some of the people you said, well, he's not a basketball player and he was great. Like you said, you grew up with Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. Who are some of those people that you told your kids, that you told your students?
One of the things I've constantly did, and my son, when he was little, he hated it. Him and his friends used to hate to see me come around because I constantly brought books around and made him read books. I constantly, and now my son, he's a habitual reader. He'll buy 2 books. He'll send me one day, hey, I read this book, won't you read it? And it exposed him to other things than basketball. Most of his friends have always been guys who weren't basketball minded. His closest friends, the 4 or 5 closest friends he's got, they're just normal people. You know, and Marv, he's always been out of the spotlight. He don't like being in the spotlight no way. So it was kind of easy for me to keep him focused on the educational aspect of things. He didn't care too much about meeting people and meeting celebrities because, I mean, he just wasn't that kind of guy. It didn't do nothing for him. You know what I mean? So yes. I think a lot of the people I kept around was like financial advisors. You know, I always made him read financial books to learn how to manage his money. I always kept him around Christian people who stayed in church. And his pastor, Pastor Robinson was probably his model because I stayed around him a lot and I kept my son around him a lot.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you mentioned your pastor. How did faith impact you as a father, a man, and as a leader?
Well, I grew up in church. When I moved to North Carolina, my grandmother, her biggest sin, used to tell me, I remember her yelling at my aunts and them when they was older, and they used to go hang out in the juke joints on Saturday nights. My mother, they come in 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. My grandmother would make them get up and go to church. She said, if you can serve the devil, you can serve the Lord. So I got a lot. I learned, and we used to go to church, man. I mean, we would pack a picnic lunch. We go to church. You could walk from my grandmother's house to our church, but we wasn't allowed to leave the church. You was in there from Sunday school to late evenings. And so with Pastor Robinson, he was a big influence on me. When I moved to Seattle, I started going to his church. He ended up marrying me and his mom. And so I've always stayed around him. And he was like, to me in that community, he was like the Martin Luther King of that community. So whenever I had issues, which I talk about in my book, I've always went straight to him. He go to the city councilmen, he go to the lawyers, the doctors, whoever it was, and he fixed the issue.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what is success to Marvin Williams, and what was that process like leading up to success?
You know, I think people have a crazy vision of success. People think having money makes you successful. That don't make you successful. What that do is just give you an opportunity. It opens a lot of different doors for you that you probably wouldn't have not having money. Success to me is being able to wake up in the morning and not worry about your kids, knowing that your kids are okay. That to me, and having peace of mind and not being able to not feed your family. That to me, when you can wake up in the morning and know your bills are paid, and you know when you pick up the phone, your child is okay and he's happy. That's all that really success is about, to me. I mean, money can only bring you so much happiness. You can't buy with so many cars. You can't buy with so many houses. You can't travel with so many places. So I think to me, money is just a byproduct of happiness. It's not the end all, the be all. I think waking up in the morning, know your kid's okay. You did a good job as a father or mother, and you're happy with what you've done, and you can look at your child and smile. That's what success is to me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So I want to know your perspective on this. Top 5 best basketball players of all time. Top five black leaders of all time, and top 5 coaches. It's a lot, but I want to know your perspective on it.
So my top 5 basketball players of all time: Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Dr. J. Let's see who else is it, and Moses Malone.
Wow.
And Akeem Olajuwon.
Interesting. Dr. J. I like them. And Moses Malone. A lot of people don't give respect. I mean, they give respect, but they're not, people don't, they kind of push past them when it comes to the top 5. So I respect that. So Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Dr. J, Moses Malone, and
Akeem Olajuwon.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Top 5 black leaders of all time.
Top 5 black leaders of all time. My number 1 would have to be former President Obama, then Martin Luther King, then Malcolm X, then let's see who else would be. Muhammad Ali, and then let's see who else would be. Probably Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Interesting. Yeah. Why Reverend Jesse Jackson?
I think he tried to keep the Martin Luther King movement alive, but somewhere along the line, his lifestyle away from all that got distorted. But I still think his whole his mission for blacks and his vision for blacks were still the same as Martin Luther King.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Respect to your list. And top 5 coaches of all time in basketball.
Dean Smith, Roy Williams.
You're from Carolina.
Mike Krzyzewski, and I forgot his name. That coached at UNLV. Tarkanian.
Oh, John. No.
Tarkanian. He coached with Larry Johnson. He was a coach with Larry Johnson now. I think his name is Tarkanian, something like that.
Interesting. Interesting.
I think the last one would be John Thompson.
I love that. You know, Dean Cain is somebody who my father he has the utmost respect. He grew up a State fan, so he doesn't even like Carolina, but he's got so much love for Dean Cain, and the fact that, like, to me, what made Dean Cain great, just from the stories that I heard from my father, was that he remembered almost all of his players' names.
Yeah, Coach Smith did. He did a good job. He even left them checks when he knew a lot of them was well off, but he still left them money to have dinner and stuff like that. And I thought that was very forward thinking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And for any of the coaches that you named, did you ever use any of their styles in your system?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. What kind of styles did you use in your system?
The funny thing was Coach Smith. I had met him when I was in high school when he was recruiting Michael Jordan and Kenny Gadsden. He used to swing by and watch me play. So when I was at a junior college in Seattle, I had wanted to play for Carolina, so I sent him a videotape. And he saw the videotape, and he says, "Hey, man, it takes about 4 years for our system for you to learn it." He said, "The only one's ever done it is Bob McAdoo." He said, "But if you want to try for my JV team, I can get you on the JV team." And the JV team coach at the time was Roy Williams. And so I thought that was interesting. And then, Coach Smith did a videotape of with Converse talking about his system, the Carolina system. I used that Carolina system to teach Marvin basketball. It broke it down to how to shoot the basketball. Roy Williams talked about in the video how to shoot the basketball. He was at Kansas then. He talked about how to shoot the basketball. Coach Smith talked about how to move your feet defensively. And so those things, I would make Marvin watch those videos over and over again until he got all that stuff down. And it was interesting. So when he went to Carolina, Sean May thought he went to the Carolina camps because he knew so much stuff about Carolina and the system. And he said, "No, my dad used to make me watch the tapes all the time."
Wow. Yeah. I got you. So I'm looking at your top 5 basketball players, and I'm saying a thing. It's either going to be the 60s or the 80s. So my question to you is, what's the greatest generation of basketball talent, and how would that fare against today's NBA with all the rule changes and everything?
That's tough because, I think Kobe was a great player, and I think Shaq definitely was a factor. I think LeBron's a great player. A lot of those guys were a little bit different than my generation because they were born athletic. You know what I mean? Guys in my generation had to work at it. There was like 1 or 2 guys who would come out of the group that might be a little extraordinary, where they was athletic and could play. Like Michael Jordan, a good example, in my era. He was one of those rare guys. But during the 90s and 2000s, those guys are so athletic and talented, it's hard to say. I would love to see that those guys play at the ages, you know what I mean? To see what the outcome would be. I think the game now is more finesse. I think in the 80s, it was more physical.
Right.
It was more brutal. So, I think the younger generation, this new generation, the 80s, 90s, 2000s, they were more athletic. They're very much all of them.
To be honest with you, for me, and this is my opinion, I believe that the 80s would beat the 90s, probably smoke them. No disrespect.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of smoke them because there was something special about the 80s decade of basketball with all the champions that they had. Plus, I felt like the young cats in the 90s, they were afraid of Jordan. You know what I mean? They were afraid of, so they didn't. Whereas the 80s, they were like, "Oh, Jordan's this young kid. We gonna respect. He's the leading scorer in the NBA, but we the champs." You know what I mean? Everybody else. And so in the early thousands, I do think there was still that great level of the big man. The big man, that was the last, in my opinion, that was the last decade. The early 2000s period was the last great decade of the big man.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
And for me, it's kind of tough because Shaquille O'Neal is my favorite player of all time.
Right.
So it's like, what is your perspective also on the big man in this game? Even though this game is evolving to a more finesse game, we're also taking away from the game because the big man has become absent. Is that good or bad for the game?
I mean, for me, I think it's bad for the game, and I'm going to tell you why. If you look at our centers now, they're all trying to shoot 3-point. They're at the 3-point line. You got 7-footers, 7-1 shooting threes. I think the 3-point line has definitely slowed it slowed the game down. It took it from being a half-court game of just bumping and grinding to a free-for-all. If I'm down 6 points, I just come down and shoot 2 threes, and I'm right back in the game. So it kind of take away that advantage of working hard. So I think the 3-point line has affected our big men's play because it's taken them out of the game. Because by the time the big man gets down to post up, you throw 1 or 2 passes, the shot's going up at the 3-point line. So the only thing they're there for now is the rebound. And now you got all our 7-footers shooting threes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So my last question to you is just in sports, when it comes to sports and race, football to me has been an interesting sport because even though we see African-American coaches in the game, assistant coaches, we see African-American quarterbacks, middle linebackers in football, it was a sport where back in the day, they didn't want African-Americans to play the middle linebacker position or the quarterback position because it was quote unquote thinking man's position. And then we see it kind of now, in a way, in my opinion, we see them praising assistant coaches, but not hiring African-American coaches. When it comes to basketball, there also was that divide, but we also see the progression. Just from somebody who's studied somebody who's a part of, the generations that experienced that. What is your take on the progression of sports, but also some of the things that we're still seeing that happened back in the day?
Well, I think the first thing with football, somewhere along the line, the players have to get to a point where their contracts are guaranteed. That's the most terrible thing in football I've ever seen. Just like the one thing I love about baseball and basketball, their contracts are guaranteed no matter what. And there's no way that you can play a brutal sport like football with one injury can take you off the rest of your life, and those guys they're not set for life afterwards. You know what I mean? So yes. At some point, black athletes, because we're like 70% of football, need to get together and put it on, and the Players Association need to get together and talk to these owners. Hey, man, we need more guaranteed contracts. I think you get better quality of football out of the football players with guaranteed contracts. You know what I mean? Then you probably won't see a lot of them jumping from team to team. You get a guarantee. People think it's guaranteed when they say, "Oh, he made $100 million." But yeah, probably 40 of that is only guaranteed. You know what I mean? So that means at any point after that, they can cut you or send you packing. And I think with football and basketball, our black athletes have enough money and power now that we should be trying to get our own teams or putting ourselves in positions to demand that. I mean, because we don't. It's like, okay, I'm the slave master. You the slave. Go out in the field, play. I'm gonna give you your freedom, but and I'm gonna give you a good paycheck. But in the meantime, I'm still running things. Yes, and I think black athletes need to come together as a group, because the one thing that people don't understand with black people with money is that we have power. We just don't use it in the right way.
Exactly.
Rather spend the money buying the bling bling, the $1 million, $2 million house, riding around a $300,000, $500,000 car. Well, we should be getting the top guys, LeBron, Shaq and all them guys together and say, hey man, let's get together and work together and get us a team together. That's what the money. That's how you get it. And then with that, you get more influence on the sport. So
yes, sir.
See how black people start using their money more efficient than, I think it's great that you work hard and you get to success, that you want to show people you got success. But I think the one thing I did like, I watched the quarterback from Kansas City do. He bought into a baseball team.
That's Mahomes. Yes, sir.
Yes, that was the most intelligent move I've ever seen an athlete do. And so he's gonna have generational money. And he's gonna have influence on the game of baseball.
Yes, sir. And you're totally right. Matter of fact, out of all the sports, and I love basketball, I love boxing, all that, but baseball was the sport where we actually had control. We actually had ownership over that sport in the Negro leagues. Yes. So you're totally right. So when people say, can it be done? There's history proves that it can be done. And we had great players who could have been Hall of Famers in the Major League Baseball. They're now in the Major League Hall of Fame. So you gotta look, it's possible. Matter of fact, I feel like that was really the last time we saw black businesses from different states come together and work together. I'm not sure if we've ever seen anything like that since.
No, I agree with you. I've been around since the 60s and I haven't seen it. But I do agree with you with the Negro League. That was a great example of what black people can do when they when they unite and use their resources properly.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Marvin Williams, for your time. Thank you. Where can they find you on social media and your book information and all that?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram, Marvin Senior 01, and you can get the book Secondary Break and NBA Dad Story on online at Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com, Walmart, iTunes, and Google Play.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
I thank you so much for having me, man. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I would have had it on a little bit longer, but my computer was about to die and my light was coming out. I'm like, oh, okay, I just got it charged up. Okay. But yeah, because I think what you're saying is so key because one, our people, we're too focused on sports, and I love sports, but that's not the only avenue.
No.
Entertainment is just one of the avenues. We have to make sure that we have black owners in all forms of business, have black banks. That's right. I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, and I saw there was a Latin bank in Durham, right where I went to school, and I was like, man, there's a Latin bank, and there's less at the time there was less Latinos in America than black people, you know what I mean? But they had their own bank. And we did have our own bank. But you know what the problem is? I feel like we're too hard on our people. If our people make a mistake, we'll be like, oh, I ain't trying to go there no more. Oh, they got bad service. But if McDonald's has bad service, we're still going to go to another McDonald's.
Or Ruth Chris has a bad service, you're still going to go to Ruth Chris. You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? So yeah. I just think it's something that we have to do. It's going to take a lot of inner work because I feel like we've been ingrained. You know what I mean? It's almost like we've been taught to think this way. So it's kind of like we have to unlearn and then relearn about ourselves. Yep. So,
but I think we can do it if we start teaching our kids. Now because kids, if we teach our new generation, our younger generation, those things. They are more now. I love this new generation because they're being more involved in politics. They're being more involved in social issues. And I think if we start teaching them those values and teaching them that, I think over time we may not be around to see it, but it will change. It could change.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That would be amazing. And I hope I say it because I'm 26. I'm trying to, I'm trying to build that same kind of ownership for my kids. You know what I mean? I'm trying to do this with this entertainment. I want to do sports. I want to do movies. I want to do books. I kind of want to do some of the things, chase my dreams like you guys did, like the Williams family did. So I definitely appreciate the conversation. I really, this is really encouraging. And I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to buy your book soon.
Jay, thank you, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I really appreciate your time. God bless you and God bless your family.
You too, sir. Have a wonderful future.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.